Thanks for rising up. I'm Dawn Ennis. In this episode, Connecticut Voice is your voice. The very first and only magazine devoted to our state's LGBT community is eye-popping, thrilling, informative, and coming your way. Meet the publisher of Connecticut Voice. You know him from his many magazines known as Seasons, and with him is the woman who hosts the podcasts that bring the written words right into your earbuds. That's all coming up. But first, so much has happened since the last time we spoke. Governor Lamont has sent a letter to all of Connecticut's residents advising them that he's changing how we do our driving, not in terms of the law, but in terms of our licenses. Instead of it being every 6 years, our licenses will now renew at 8 years. Our registrations will now be 3 years instead of 2. The reasons for these changes is simple. He doesn't want us to be standing at the DMV in a crowded line like I was just this last weekend when my daughter got her driver's license. He also wants to save money by doing that. If we have our registrations and our licenses renewing over longer periods of time, it means less money out of the state budget, which, as you know, is in crisis. As for my daughter driving, I want to let you know that you should beware. I'll be posting signs all over town. Sophie is driving. Be careful. Speaking of beware, the continuing drumbeat in Washington has LGBTQ Americans fearful about the future. All anybody wants is that same thing that Thomas Jefferson promised in the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Who is going to represent that voice? There's an answer now for the first time in the history of Connecticut publishing. Here with that answer are my guests this episode, Jim Tully and Kyone Wolf. Jim worked in radio before he became an entrepreneur and publisher of the Seasons magazine franchise. Kyone works for Connecticut Voice as the producer of podcasts, among other things, her own production company. Welcome, my friends. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Dawn.
You're the first time I've ever had 2 guests at once, so this will be a learning experience for both of us, all 3 of us. What is Connecticut Voice, Jim? Why don't you tell us and our viewers what Connecticut Voice is all about, and why is it coming to be?
I think I can give you a good backdrop on that before I get into what it is. So,
Okay.
Probably about 2 years ago, so as Dawn mentioned, I do own a series of magazines called Seasons Magazines. So right now I've been able to scale it to a Seasons of Farmington Valley, West Hartford, Glastonbury, Northwest Hills, Connecticut Shoreline, as well as Seasons of New Haven. Now is when it gets interesting. There was a client of mine about 2 years ago who said, "Hey Jim," we were talking, he said, "There's a great chamber of commerce you need to be aware of." So I said, "Okay, tell me a little bit about it." He said, "It's the Connecticut Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce." And I said, like many people said, I didn't even know the gay and lesbian folks had a chamber of commerce.
I'll be honest, I didn't know either.
Most didn't, and I'm going to change that also. So I said, sure, that sounds good. So I actually ended up calling a couple of the principals there and said, I'd like to join. I'd like Seasons to be a part of this. So they said, absolutely, we'd love to have you and other magazines.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
Are you LGBTQ? Are you lesbian, gay, or?
I am not. I am not.
So you're a straight man?
I am a straight man who lives in West Simsbury, Connecticut.
That's awesome. And you wanted to join this Chamber of Commerce. Why?
I just thought it was important. It's just important for my media company to be part of this. And they do such great work. So, and the people, it's all about the people. So I couldn't have been more pleased. And I went to a couple of meetings. We fast forward 6 months, and I was just so impressed by everything they did. They went above and beyond. They were just thrilled to have me. So I'm sitting down on the couch watching a Mets game with my wife.
Yes, go Mets.
Typically getting blown out.
Yes.
And I've got my little iPhone there, and I said, "Honey, I have an idea." And Rachel looked at me and she rolled her eyes. She said, "Oh God, now what?" I said, No, wait a minute. So I sent the president of the chamber, John Snooden, a text. I said, "Hey John, just curious, does the LGBTQ community have a magazine?" I think John set a record for a reply, maybe a second. And he said, "Oh my God, no, what are you thinking?" And that's what started it. So for the past 2 years, I've really been doing my homework, a couple of different things. So it really has to be a partnership. And that was my goal early on. Make it a partnership with the LGBT community. Take it from there. Tell them a little bit about what we're doing, how we're doing it. They understood why we were doing it. They were very, very concerned about the content, as are all of my advertisers. Now, fortunately, I've got a pretty good track record with Seasons. So they knew more or less the quality of what we were going to deliver, and I assured them that, because it's very easy to show people, here's what it is. They're taking me a little bit of my word of what we were going to do, but again, that track record came into play. And then after a while, I formed a board of advisors, as you well know.
Yeah, you did. And actually, you invited me to be a part of it.
I did.
You also invited Kyone, and there are other people on our board. What, about 9 or 10, some roughly?
It's a little bit less than that, but...
And they're all members of different parts of the community.
It had to be, because the LGBTQ is truly a spectrum of really fantastic people. So I wanted everything that we did to be representative of the community. And then I went to the advertisers, because the magazine itself is going to be free. So for the first year, Connecticut Voice, similar to Seasons magazines, is free. All people have to do is go onto our landing page, our website, ctvoicemag.com, and just register.
And we'll have a link on RiseUpWithDawn.com so you can find it easily. But tell me more about what's in the magazine. So I know how it came to be, but what's going to be in it?
It's going to be just, we take what we're doing with Seasons and we just apply it here. And it all starts with one simple process. Tell us a story. I'm a big believer. Tell us a story. I want the story to be interesting, to be entertaining, to be a little bit humorous. You may know about some of the subjects and say, geez, I didn't know about that, or it may be completely new to you. So one of the key pieces that we wanted to do that people don't know a lot about was one of the great areas that a lot of the LGBT community typically visits as a tourism. So a lot of folks think, Fire Island, a number of different places, Provincetown,
Hamptons.
Hamptons. So one of my folks on my board of advisors, his name is Frank Rizzo. Frank is a major talent. He's also a great guy. Frank said, boy, I've got a unique story to tell. And it's an area where the LGBT community is really driving up business, everything. I said, what's the name of it? It's Asbury Park.
Bruce Springsteen.
Bruce Springsteen, who was my favorite. So it couldn't have been, so that's the type of story that we want to do. So we cover literally everything from the interview, who was James Whiteside, and I could talk more about that.
I want to hear about James Whiteside, because first off, here's a picture we're showing right now of James Whiteside on the cover. That is just stunning. He's going to really make a lot of impact, because I don't know if people really know who he is, but tell us a little bit about what he does.
Well, first of all, he agreed to be on the cover of a magazine that has never been published. So I give him a big applause for that.
Brave man.
So again, he also knew Frank Rizzo, which was great. Everything that we do in the magazine is about Connecticut. And it's Connecticut people, with the exception of our travel piece, but it's all about Connecticut. James just happens to be down from Fairfield County. He is the lead dancer for the American City Ballet in New York City. He's 35 years old. As you can see, he is a fabulous looking guy.
Yes.
He's also a great guy. He's multi-talented. He is a pop star. His Instagram, I highly encourage you to check out the Instagram. It's self-explanatory.
And he's body positive, and that's wonderful to celebrate such an athletic, attractive man. And I think it's going to be a real eye-catcher when people see the magazine.
Just wait till you see the magazine, because not only do we tell stories, our photography is through the roof. We have the most talented people, I'm saying I'm a little prejudicial, in the state of Connecticut, because it's not only about the subject matter, it's about the passion of what they're doing. So it's a great story. We have it laid out wonderfully in the magazine. So we do everything from arts and culture to history to food to fashion, but it's all geared toward the LGBT community. We want to make sure there's a real proper balance there in each one of the stories. So we're starting off, and I think everybody's going to be really, really pleased, but it's step one.
It's shocking to me that there hasn't been a magazine like this before. I mean, all across the country, I'm a journalist for the last 30 years, there are LGBT magazines in almost every city. Hartford's a pretty big city, New Haven's a pretty big city, Bridgeport, Stamford, all big cities, and there's not one LGBTQ-oriented magazine.
There is now.
Until now.
How was that, huh?
I've written 2 stories in our current issue, the debut issue. One is about transgender men, some of whom live here in Connecticut, some of your neighbors, and the struggles they have because, believe it or not, after being raised as female presenting people and finally becoming authentic and living their true male lives, they feel erased because they pass. They look, sound, appear to be just another guy. And they still want to identify as queer, but they have that struggle. So that's one of the issues I discuss with my interviewees. I also wrote about Stonewall, because this is the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. And there is a New Haven connection, a man who founded an organization in New Haven as a result of the riots in New York. So I'm really excited about what I'm doing. Someone else here is here, and she's excited about her work too. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Kyone so that I know and the viewers know why Kyone is part of our team.
That was easy. I've worked with Kyone in the past. This was the first person I turned to because I know of Kyone's talents, I know of her passion, and I also know she likes creative freedom. That's a huge deal. And by the way, that's one of the smartest things I ever did. So one of the things I wanted to do was really have Kyone take on the podcast because I think that's important. Not only is Connecticut Voice a great magazine, but it's truly multimedia. So we do everything from digital. Please follow us on social. I've got some plans coming down the road that I'll tell you about.
We got links right here.
We got some very cool stuff. But we also wanted to do podcasts because I understand the importance and really the ability to tell a really great story in long form. And I couldn't have found a better person than Kyone. I said, Kyone, it's yours. Here's the title. It's called Connecticut Voice Podcast with Kyone Wolf. And I left it at that and said, Kyone, go.
It'd be really weird if it was Connecticut Voice Podcast with Kyone Wolf and not have Kyone Wolf host the thing. So, I said yes.
You got a job because your name was in the show. That's perfect.
It was just made so much sense.
Same here, Rise Up with Dawn Ennis. I
right?
had to join. Now tell me, you've done other podcasts besides this one.
Sure.
How are these different?
So this, I love, what's great about any podcast is when it's really focused on one thing. So some people start off podcasts and it's a little broad and then you're not sure really what you're signing up for, but this is so focused. It's on the LGBTQIA plus community in Connecticut. And I'm sure that as time goes on, we might broaden it a little bit, but the fact that I can really zero in on who we can talk to, a combination of my own resources. I am a queer woman and I live in Hartford. I've lived here almost my whole life. And so I've developed a lot of connections with people on this spectrum in this state. And some people who you've never heard of. And some people you've definitely heard of. And everyone in between. And I think it's so important and exciting to get to know these people. And one of the things that I'm most excited about is I've struggled ever since I came out in the 90s with where to put the importance of my sexual orientation and my gender identity. You know, when I first came out, it was rainbow flags and freedom rings, like all over the place. And then as I grew up and sort of through, I felt like my sexual orientation and gender identity were just a part of the bigger whole of me. At the same time, you can't write off these aspects of ourselves, especially, you know, in this culture right now and in this part of the country and in this time in our history. So the podcast is a balance of talking with people about being on this spectrum and talking with people who they're going to be talking about, you know, writing a science fiction book or a fantasy book, and they happen to be on this spectrum, and how that conversation may just barely overlap in that way.
I think it's great because I think a lot of people see us trying to be advocates for our community because we are a minority, we are marginalized, living on the margins, and one of the phrases I've learned to love is when someone who is an LGBTQ person says to someone like yourself, Jim, I wish you would stop putting all this cisgender, heteronormative, public displays of affection in my face. It's really annoying to me that you guys are kissing each other and holding hands in public. Why do you do that? It's just, it might corrupt my gay children. Oh, wow. If you spin it that way, people immediately see that, oh, well, that's ridiculous. You can't become gay or trans or any other part of the spectrum just by observing it. What most people ought to do, I hope, is just understand what you just said. We are everyday Americans, everyday Connecticut residents who happen to also be LGBTQIA+.
And it's important to talk about it still. I know a lot of people wish we were at the point where any sort of gender identity or sexual orientation that's not at the end of the spectrum, people want that to not be a big deal anymore. And I guess I do too, but we're not there yet. No. And we've made so much progress because we've talked about it, because we put our voices on the line and our bodies on the line to say, I'm here, and everything I am is wonderful and great, just the way it is. Yeah.
Tell me the first podcast that's on the website.
The first podcast, my very first part was with Katie Tierney. She's the medical director of the transgender medicine program at Middlesex Health. And it's frustrating to edit these podcasts because we talk for like an hour. And I want to get it down to the 20-minute range. So maybe later we'll have an opportunity to show the full podcast, the full taped episode. But she talks about what it's like for her, how she got into this whole field of medicine, and what's a success story sound like? What are some challenges that people are up against when they come see her psychologically and physically? How do they move through this process? And she gets into some really beautiful nuances, especially when it comes to this current administration and this current what people are dealing with in terms of their own health care and paying for it and things like that. So it's a really deep interview. It's really sweet. It's really serious. It's really funny. And I also took a little time to talk to Martin Geitz, who's the president and CEO of Simsbury Bank. And they've won awards and really prioritized diversity in their workplace. And we had a short conversation about why that matters. And you would think that it's important to get diverse customers, but that starts with having a diverse workplace. So that was just the first episode. And the subsequent ones, for the most part, will be just one interview. And I've got two already done to follow up. And
Fabulous.
I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Katie's also my endocrinologist.
Yes,
I've
so
known
lucky.
her for years. I am very fortunate.
Yeah,
This
you
isn't
are.
a plug. I just wanted to say that it warms my heart to know that she's getting the recognition that she deserves, because, Jim, it's so hard for me to convey to you what it's like when you go to a doctor. Just today, I had to do a blood sample, right? So I have my little blood thing left over. And I would like to just be treated like every other woman who comes in. But instead, the phlebotomist asked me a question that caused me to have to out myself publicly. I don't see why it's relevant, but I don't mind it because, well, I'm living out. But imagine having to do that every single day. And I don't have a beautiful voice like Kion. I don't have maybe the right stature or the right look for being immediately clocked as a woman. But for those of us who are struggling with this, including trans men, it's an everyday part of our lives. And what I want to give you a tip of the hat to is that you're giving the people in the community their voice. Because up until now, it's so frustrating that cisgender people write about us and we don't get to tell our own stories.
What do you do now?
How do people get involved? I want people to be able to join our team. How do they do that?
Just follow us. Keep a look at what we're doing. You can read the magazine. I'm a big believer. Just read it. Read the magazine. You'll see us. We are very, very active right now on all social media, from Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. Listen to Kion's podcast. That just gives you such a great insight in terms of what we're trying to do here and what we're going to continue to do at Voice.
How often will it be appearing?
It comes out quarterly.
Okay.
There's also be a digital version, again, online. So you can read the whole thing online. You can share. So we encourage our audience, if you see an article, if you see a piece, if you see a quote, you can actually highlight it and share it via email, Facebook, so the technology's there, which we really believe in. One of the things I try to pride myself in doing is looking down the road. What are we going to be doing down the road? We're going to be doing a lot more video. Maybe a show. I want to take Kion live.
Now, you have a show already, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I do. I have my own production company, and I feel a bit full to the brim with ideas. So Kion Wolf Productions, again, it's a good thing it's called Kion Wolf Productions, or else I'd have to hire Jim. And so I have a storytelling show called The Mouth Off Storytelling at the Mark Twain House and Museum, and that's in its 7th year, and that podcast will be coming out relatively soon. I also have an advice show called Asking for a Friend with Kion Wolf at CT Improv's Underground Comedy Theater in downtown Hartford.
And spell CT because people may not
Thank
find
you.
it.
You think it's CT like Connecticut, but it's SEATEA. So it's CT Improv. It's every third Saturday at 7 p.m. sharp. That's it's cool. We talk about problems that are relevant to the news, but also broadly. So they're sort of evergreen problems. And that podcast is coming out soon. I'm actually writing the theme song right now.
Jim and I actually appeared in your audience, and then in the show, you bring the audience into the show.
That's right. The audience members, those who volunteer, judge the panelists, and the panelists who get the most points at the end of the night wins a loofah. And a loofah because it's a cheap prize. I'm working on a real small budget right now.
Real small.
Real
small.
And it's a ridiculous word. And you need to change your loofah every month anyway, and it's a monthly show. So the loofah of truth, and it also sits on a pedestal, and it's lit by, I'm pretty sure, the world's only loofah spotlight. A whole spotlight for a loofah.
I had a ball when I went.
I'm so
I
glad
to
you
go
went.
back
That was a
again.
lot of fun.
Thank
But it would be a great way to incorporate
Yeah.
Connecticut Voice and your work. Now, I'd like to know a little bit more about each of you. We've gotten to hear about what we're doing, but first, Kion, tell me, how did you get started in this podcast business? I mean, Did you always want to do a podcast? Because they've only been around for 3 years, 4 years, 5
Well,
years?
I forget the numbers, but there's so many podcasts right now. There's podcasts, of course, with public radio, which I'm intimately involved in. Big fan of podcasts in general. It's a great way to learn new things while you're doing other stuff, while you're going for a walk, or you're working on a rowing machine, or you're just gazing out the window or petting your cat. It's really important, and they're all free, right? So why not engage your own curiosity from the inside out? And so it's been a nice challenge for me to try to figure out how to edit these podcasts, because you can come up with a podcast idea and you could do the thing, but I'm not going to listen to a 2-hour-long podcast, an hour-long podcast. 40-something minutes is it better be really good for me to stick around that long. I know some people feel differently, but the beauty is in the edit, and that comes down to everything. These mugs have been edited from their original shape down. These clothes have been edited.
Sure. Your hair?
My hair has definitely been edited. Yeah. Really edited.
You have a lot of great ink.
Yeah, that's true.
That's right.
That's more additive. Well,
additive?
It's
okay.
editing. Anyway, the point that the art has been, and the big challenge and reward for me has been in refining my editing skills. And I'm pretty ruthless as an editor. So it also focuses the idea. And the more focused the idea, the more you can get distractions out of the way and get people's messages out, which is really the whole point of it, to be heard and to speak.
And we have a podcast that is in conjunction with this particular show. It's called Before the War with Chardonnay, Marlowe, and myself, and it airs once a week. It's only 20 minutes.
See?
We got to keep it under 20 minutes to keep people's attention.
That's just the way it is.
It's fun. I really enjoy doing podcasts, but I got to be honest, it is a challenge because you do have to be ruthless.
Yeah, so much more work than people think, but that's the great thing about it, is if you do it well, people don't think about the work you put into it. They just take away what you've done. But if you don't do the work well, then it's obvious that the work wasn't really thorough.
Speaking of thorough work and doing work well, Jim, tell us a little bit of how you got to this point. I mentioned earlier that you were involved in radio, but that's not the whole story.
No, I hope not. I started off really my professional career in radio, but it was radio sales. So when I mentioned, I was in radio, they said, you have the voice for radio. No, it was not about that. So I just started earning my stripes. So I literally sold, here's the Yellow Pages, Young Jimmy Tully, go. And every step along the way it teaches a lesson, just like everything that we've done. It's taught me a lesson and a lot of great things and a lot of the ability to be thick-skinned and just keep moving forward. So we talked a little bit before off camera about the word no.
Yeah.
Boy, I heard that a lot. And that's okay. That's
never
a great
accept
word.
the first no.
No.
In most circumstances.
It just for the most part. It just starts there, certainly in business.
I should say, consent.
Yeah. Consent is sexy.
Yeah.
But we're not talking, anyway.
Yeah,
But
I hear your point.
Not in radio. Well, you never know. I started growing up and moving up in the radio ladder and GSM and DOS of a couple of different markets. And then in 1999, when my wife was pregnant with our third child, I noticed that our second child had some special needs. So he's on the autism spectrum. And we had an opportunity to move back to where I grew up, literally. And that was in Simsbury, Connecticut. We knew the education was great, for not only for the kids, but for special needs. And we made a lifestyle decision. Let's go home. So we did that. And it was all up to my wife. She'd moved around with me enough. She'd moved. And if you're any good, you start moving. But it started every 2 years. It got old real quick. And when you start adding children to the mix, as you know, it just enough. So we made a decision to move back to Simsbury. We're thrilled we did it. It was a little bit over 19 years ago. Got a little bit of different experience in some different medium outside of radio. And I started Seasons in 2006 because I wanted to do my own. And I had a vision on what I wanted to do it. And fortunately at that time, and as time has gone on, it's all about the people. So as they say, I'm a great vision guy internally, but they can execute. And I have, again, I can't tell you the great people, the talented people that I have. They're adults. They know exactly what to do. They're not afraid to make a mistake. Be creative. I tell them, think outside the box. Go. Let's have some fun. So with Seasons, we've been able to do that. And with Connecticut Voice, it's even expanded even further. So it's fun.
When we first met to talk about the magazine and the podcast, I was struck by Jim's enthusiasm, as you can't contain your enthusiasm, which is contagious. But I was also really excited. You were like, you know what? Take chances. Have fun. Try stuff. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like, go for it. Be creative. And it was, I've never been spoken to that way or treated that way or given that sort of permission as somebody who's saying, join this team, let's start this thing. And it was really inspiring and exciting to be trusted that way and to be encouraged to go play. It's a magazine, it's a podcast. Go play, have fun.
Have fun with it. I try to teach my kids, and this is sort of funny, when we're driving into the parking lot or wherever it may be. Everybody takes the first spot that's available. And I've taught them, it drives them crazy.
Yes.
I'm going to go the front row.
Yep.
Because nobody else goes there. And it's the same, the analogy is, it's essentially everybody goes to the lowest hanging branch.
Yep.
I'm not interested in that branch because everybody's picking the same fruit from the same branch. If you just go up 2 rungs higher, God, the fruit's bigger. It's sweeter, it's better. It's a different mindset. Go! Try it. You're not breaking anything. So that's what we've done.
We're almost done, but I wanted to ask one thing. Yes, we
Okay. All right.
We're done on our show.
Okay.
You're just beginning.
Yeah.
As the parent of a special needs child, as someone who has special needs people in our family, my late wife was a teacher of special needs, do you think that makes you more attuned to a marginalized community like the LGBTQ, or is that just who you always were?
It's who I was, but it's even grown further. So when I grew up, I had a sister who was mentally challenged, severely mentally challenged. And I didn't really grasp that because Tara was much older than I was. But when you become the parent of a special needs child, you root for the underdog. I think that's the best way I can say it. I root for the underdog. And we try to do that in everything we do, even in the magazines and seasons. And not only here, we have a piece called In the Spirit. So we focus a spotlight on a group, on individuals that are really making an impact in the community, whether it be the LGBT community or each one of the areas that we reach. And we really try to show what these folks are doing. They're doing some great work. By the way, support them. So that's important to us. So it's a give back, but yeah, that's certainly opened my eyes every single day.
I'm so looking forward to seeing the finished
Yeah.
product. You are making the underdogs the top dogs.
Thank you.
Thank you both. I appreciate all your time.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you for rising up. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and listen to our podcast on SoundCloud, beforethewarpodcast.com, and we'll link to you on riseupwithdawn.com. All the links for everything we've talked about is on our website. See you next time. Thanks.